Welcome to lesson 14 of class, seeing through the logic. Now, if you remember other lessons like seeing in between, where I touched on a couple other things, that was in creativity. In this one, we're gonna go further into logic, mixing and touching on some of those key points from lessons 1 through 9. And then of course, adding in a little bit of artwork in between to go ahead and explain the logic using creativity. How beautiful is that? Now, let's go ahead and identify what is logic. Logic is, by definition, the reasoning conducted or assessed according to strict principles or validity. Now, logic helps us make sense of the world around us. What does that mean though? Well, it puts things into simple terms. So 1 plus 1 equals 2, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and so on and so forth. Now with logic, someone can make almost anything seem true. Now remember this, if somebody has built up enough logic, it can actually trick the brain into thinking that something is true. This is where things like cognitive biases come into place, or an association bias. You see a high price with something, it must be of value because it's expensive, right? Well, not all the time. So these are things that we have to look at because, well, with enough of those, you can trick the brain into thinking almost anything is true, right? So moving forward, this is why having a good lawyer is important, especially in a courtroom when it matters. If there's too much creativity applied, well, then it's going to be hard to understand the logic, making it hard to make sense of the creativity. Now, this is why most people don't understand the value of art or a painting without a story with logic built into it so that they too could understand the perceived value that one is getting from this thing, this piece of artwork, this Picasso or whatever the case may be. I mean, how many of you have seen Picasso's work? I mean, have you studied Cubism? You could barely kind of see exactly what's going on there, but to the eye of the beholder, which is where beauty lies, that's where the perceived value is. Now remember, depending on the energy, some people might listen and get influenced that way, but most people are also visual. They want to see something happen as well. So combining the two with creativity and logic, putting the story with the visual together makes things so much more obtainable when it comes to understanding the perceived value that it brings to an individual. Now remember, lesson 1 started with a curved line that became so many things, right? I don't know if you remember lesson 1. Let me put this down right here. And I said, well, what is this? And it was a curved line. At least some people described it as a curved line. Well, other people were to say something else. If I were to draw it this way, would it still be a curved line, the letter C, a part of a circle, or whatever the case may be? Now, it was said that a curved line was drawn in the sand to identify true Christians, and then of course they would have to complete it. But how would they complete it? Would they go ahead and draw another line in the sand? Would they say what it was, or would they just complete it as such to create a fish? Now, the reason why this is important, especially when it comes to when people were being prosecuted, is because intelligent, secretive things like this can be helpful in certain environments such as law and when safety and security is needed to stay alive. So remember, they had signs and symbols for everything. Now, if you remember the movie Hook, think about it this way. It was not logical for people to just go and draw a line in the sand. It doesn't make any sense. But if you were a true person to whom you were, you can go ahead and draw the line, so on and so forth, and somebody else would know exactly what you're doing because, well, it's not logical to draw a line in the sand, so one might think one as crazy if they are not informed. Some might be confused and think of it as the letter C or a U drawn upside down, or the letter N. An example would be, do you remember the movie Hook with Peter Pan and Robin Williams, so on and so forth? When he realized who he was, he drew a line in the sand, a curved line in the sand, and all the Lost Boys realized who he was, and the Lost Boys ran behind him, so on and so forth. In other words, do not cross this line right here, so on and so forth. And when the Lost Boys went behind him, they said, "You are the Pan," so on and so forth, if you remember that part of the movie. Now, what's logical about art that makes it so valuable to someone? Well, the answer is nothing until you apply a story to it. Some people might say the same thing about spirituality, which makes it what makes it so valuable to people that would actually risk their lives for the things that they believe in. You know, you've heard of martyrs and things like that. Well, how many martyrs are there in spiritual teachings? What's so valuable about the teachings that somebody's willing to actually put their life on the line for it, right? It has been proven by your sciences that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just transforms into something else or another form. So would it not be logical to say that the spark that resides within all of us could be known as a soul that leaves once we are done here and transforms into something else more energetic? This would be the contemplation of the, spiritual world, right? So if we're here, this is our little happy self, so on and so forth, etc. When we're not here anymore and our energy leaves the body, where does it go? Well, it could go into the ether, it could go into other places. However, energy cannot be, it can only transform, it cannot be destroyed. So that's one of my arguments there. And so therefore you have to understand the terminology that is being used when you're using these terms. For one thing might be called a spark. If you touch a battery or you put your tongue on a 9-volt battery, you're gonna feel a spark, but it's an invisible force, right? You can only see it once it's acted upon and you have something to actually visualize it. And that's the thing that people are trying to get to. Now, if you know me from anywhere else, you know that I normally have notes, so on and so forth, and that's exactly what I'm looking at here. And moving forward, it says, is it not logical to think in such a manner when basing things upon your rules and guidelines with the understanding, would you call someone crazy for this? So let me repeat that. It's not logical to think in such a manner. So some of the stuff that we were stating above, drawing a curved line, what does it mean? How to think outside the box, all these things. It would almost be as though someone was crazy for believing this stuff. But if you read history books, people used to meet up, they used to draw a line in the sand, so on and so forth, a curved line. They would either speak or draw one back, revealing that they were also a Christian, also drawing the crossroads that you would normally end up in, depending on the situation you were in. But remember, in lesson 1, if I was speaking to, let's say, another intelligent person that dealt with space, I might draw the curved line this way, and then they might draw it this way, so on and so forth. And then I could go ahead and add some stuff here. And now this kind of looks like, well, it could be a rocket ship, so on and so forth. Remember lesson 1, I could draw a basket here. It could be a hot air balloon if you're into hot air balloons and traveling around the world like Richard Branson was. So it really goes into a variety of things depending on whom you're speaking to. So therefore, by which, if you're not in the know, if you don't understand what someone is saying, you're gonna get lost in the sauce along the way, and you might be confused, and you might just say that person's crazy because it's easier to call someone by name of labels. So this person's bipolar, this person's manic, this person's this person's psychotic. I don't know why they're drawing lines in the sand like a crazy person. Well, if you were to back up a couple years, a lot of people would be called crazy. And well, let's just say the mental health space would be very profitable. I'm speaking from experience here, and I know this for a fact. So moving forward, is it logical to profit from blood pressure medication when natural remedies can do the same thing, such as cayenne pepper, which has capsaicin within it, which has been proven to lower blood pressure? Now, I'm not a doctor here. However, I do play with, excuse me, I do play with ChatGPT, and it's already proven that it could pass the MCAT. And according to ChatGPT, I'll put the video somewhere around here, but capsaicin has been known and has many other benefits besides lowering blood pressure and things like that in a natural way. Why hasn't anybody been told this? Well, because they make more money with the blood pressure medication. That's a fact. So if you're looking at the profit side of things, of course, they're gonna say you're crazy for drinking cayenne pepper with some warm water for about 2 weeks straight, if it's about the size of a tablespoon, to get all the health benefits from it at least once every other day. And I've seen people do it and it works beautifully. However, doctors might say you're crazy, or some that actually know what they're talking about might actually agree with you and realize that that's why your blood pressure is coming down. That's why they're seeing so many other benefits. That's why your fatty liver issue is going away, so on and so forth, because the capsaicin helps with all of that. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. You could take ChatGPT's word because, well, not only did it pass the MCAT, which is a test you need in order to get into medical school, but it has access and knowledge to everything on the internet. So unless they're going to scrape everything off the internet to make you believe something, you can go ahead and check that out for yourself, and I'll put the video somewhere over here. If anything, I'll do this. I'll step over to the side because I know it hasn't came up yet, and I'll put it right over the board so that you can see exactly everything that capsaicin is able to do, and you can see it in a nice manner here in the center. So moving forward, I mean, think about this. If they're profiteering from all these things, I mean, what does the Hippocratic Oath have to do with anything? Well, because they're profiting, right? And in there, in the Hippocratic Oath, it says holiness, which refers to the sacred duty and responsibility of a physician that has to uphold the highest ethical standard in practice, treating patient information, confidentiality, considering the practice of medicine as a noble, reverend calling. Now, if that is not understood, how in the world are you going to take care of someone that you're supposed to be entrusted with their life because you're more worried about putting dollars in your pocket than actually helping them? So you're going to do everything under the sun to not only benefit yourself, but to benefit them, but it's gonna harm them in the long run, either financially or physically, because as we all know, not all medications last forever, and then you have to stack upon them. My grandmother was a direct recipient of this. They kept stacking her medications. She was on 13 medications to counteract other medications that were doing stuff to her, and nobody was wiser to go ahead and actually do their research so that they could see, oh, we could take you off of these. You could do this naturally. We could go ahead and do this for you, etc. But it wasn't until later that they figured all that out. So hopefully with this video, you too will be able to see a little bit ahead and look at the side effects of all these medications that cause suicide, so on and so forth, especially in the mental health space. Or if you're dealing with stuff like Ozempic or whatever, that also has that feature within there. You know, these are things that they don't tell you, but they do put it on their websites, and it's public knowledge. So, moving forward, is it logical to trust this oath with everything that has gone on? I mean, let's think about it here. Can we actually trust this oath with everything that has gone on, especially with things like COVID and everything else, right? Look, Dr. Anthony Fauci wasn't right about a lot of things, but he was a doctor, right? So you took his word as gospel truth because he was an MD, had a piece of paper that made him confident. When's the last time he had to treat so many people? How do you know that the vaccine was going to work for everybody? You didn't. But you did as you were told because you were groomed to do so. This is called social engineering. The same thing applies in the computer world. Now, if we're talking about the computer world, people could talk about the Matrix or whatever. I'm going to talk about Python because it's relatively used quite often. And because we drew the curved line here, what's special about the curved line in Python? Well, if I have two of them, that's a parentheses, and that parentheses can mean a couple things within Python, right? It can call for functions and methods within the coding script. It can group expressions together, such as words, terminology, so on and so forth. And it's a generator of expressions. So if you were to put values in there, it could total it up, so on and so forth. Now, if you know me from anything, you know I like to wrap things up, and this is a short lesson, but hopefully the logic got to you because, well, with logic, how much creativity or explanation do you really need? So let's get to it. The letter L, because this is logic, in Roman numerals stands for the number 50. So I'll put that in there in between parentheses. But it's also the 12th letter of the alphabet. So I want to go ahead and put this here, so on and so forth. Now, class, I don't know if you remember this from past lessons, each letter has a value assigned to it, and that adds up to 54. So I'm going to put 54 right here, and then 54 simplifies down to 9. But then, of course, the word logic itself, each word, or each letter, I should say, has a numerical value, and that comes out to 46. So if I were to add these up, right, 54 plus 46 plus 50 plus 12, I would get 162. And then of course, simplified. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll notice the 3 and then the 6, which come out to, well, 9. And then if I simplify this, 1 plus 6 plus 2 is 9. So you can see that there. And there's your 369 right there for anybody that's interested in understanding the keys to the universe reside in 369. The answer is always 42 because, well, 6 resides in the middle. And then of course it brings everything together because 9 was the last lesson within creativity that brought us into logic. So I think this was an amazing place to stop. I hope that this lesson, although short, really stuck with you and you understood that you can't always take things for granted. You can't always judge a book by its cover, for you do not know that the pages and the words inside might save your life one day. So here's a little homework assignment. Before you take someone for their word, do some research. Get on ChatGPT. Don't be scared. Go onto the internet. Do some research. Look up cayenne pepper and everything that it has and the benefits, so on and so forth, so that you can go ahead and maybe benefit from that. Go look up other side effects and things that might come from stuff that you may not understand, right? How did a curved line and then create the parentheses or create the fish or all this other stuff, right? Where does this all go and what's the meaning of it all? I think some of us who struggle sometimes, as Dr. Jordan Peterson says, those who struggle with God, will have a lot of questions. But hopefully throughout these lessons, I'll be able to help you. Remember, this was lesson 14. We are now coming close to a couple things. And if I were to do this correctly, and I think I did. Let me see something. It just hit me. If I were to take 9, and then 9 plus 14. Well, that's interesting because 19, that's 23, right? What's so special about 23? Well, 23 simplifies to 5. I don't know if you got that right there. There's 5 letters in class. 5 is the number of grace. And if you've been watching the news, 23andMe recently got hacked and had a data breach. So if you haven't been paying attention to these things, well then figure out how to put the patterns and the pieces together. If not, reach out to me in the comments section. If you thought this was helpful, smash that like button. This is Mike City out. Don't forget, by the way, the number 54 in class also correlates to a deck of playing cards, which actually has 365 pips in it, which create a year. You have 54 cards because there's 2 jokers in here. One, which will give you the leap year, the other one's a guaranteed card. But then, of course, you have 4 of each suit, which is the 4 seasons, 13 of each card, 13 phases of the moon, etc., so on and so forth, or 13 weeks within each season, 52 weeks in a year. I'll let you be the problem solver to that. But this has been a super short wrap-up of lesson 14. Sorry I was a little bit all over the place when it came to the end, but that's just a little weird. But let's just call it grace from now on. Till next time, my friends, take care. God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.